I'm really glad you're here, and I'm really excited to do this. This is the 18th Easter that Redeemer celebrated together. I've been putting my dad's old 42 regular on every single year for this one service. Usually if I'm in a sport jacket or something, somebody's like, all right, what happened? Like somebody's probably passed on, with the Lord, or maybe a wedding, something like that. But this is that one time where I actually look like a legit pastor. So anyways, I'm really privileged to be able to do this today. That we're talking about the center point of everything. This is the story about everything, and really the center point of all of human history. Let me catch you up that we talked about a lot of this last night at Good Friday, but I realized that not everybody was here, and so here's the basic idea: is that He's been betrayed. We talked about that last Sunday, actually, from one of his 12 closest guys. And things start to go really quickly, and there's a trial. I mean, it's not really real, but there's a trial, and they sentence Jesus to death. And there's it's politically expedient for the Romans, for the Jewish leaders there, that they're able to quieten someone that had really been frustrating them. And so the ball's in motion, and then where that it just was really a lot to take in last night as we read through all of Matthew 27, or at least a good majority of it. That imagine right before Jesus is going to go on the cross, that you've got some Roman guards, some other people, and they're just totally making a mockery of him. I mean, they put a red cloak on him, like a lot of the Roman senators or other dignitaries would wear, going, "Oh, hail, King of the Jews," and put on a crown of thorns. Go, "Oh, you're a king, are you? Well, we got just the thing for you." And they put that on him, and they fake bowing down and all the things, and just they spit on him. I mean, just imagine the insult, especially given who he is. That he's, from what the Bible teaches, he's God and he's taken on human flesh. So those things all happen. Then he goes to the cross, and it's just one of the most painful ways that someone could die that's ever been devised. You're between the blood loss, between just that you can't really support your frame to be able to breathe, and you're kind of slowly suffocating, and even just exposure. I mean, it's really brutal. And then while all that's going on, you get more mockery. You have people that are just like going to pick up kids from soccer, that are walking by and going, "Oh yeah, King of the Jews," that kind of thing, and just heckling him. "Oh, hey, we heard that you tear this temple down, and 3 days later you'll build it back up. Why don't you do that? Save yourself. You're talking about saving Israel, saving the world. Why don't you start with saving yourself, because you don't look like you're in a great spot?" So, I mean, just all the humiliation, mockery, and even a misunderstanding of it. Now, something that I didn't really highlight last night on our Good Friday service was that it did, at the very end of Matthew 27, like right after he dies, so he ends up dying on the cross, and he says, that we did talk about this, that he says that "Father, why have you forsaken me?" And that's such a critical part, that he is, God the Father effectively turns his back on Jesus there while he dies, because he's taking on the sin of everyone that would believe and all of our guilt and shame. He became forsaken for us. But then there's this last part that's super interesting, and it just talked about the sadness of who was there. And it was actually a fairly small number of people. It was like a couple of these folks that we're going to hear about today in the story that Emily just read. A couple of women, his mom, his dad, and like that whole group of 12 strong, ride or die, that most of those guys, there's a couple of them that are around, but most of those guys are gone too. And so, it just would feel like, the last thing you'd be seeing before you die, you would look out and you would see your crew absent. I mean, just all of it, the betrayal, the loss, the suffering, and all of those things happen. And that is where we left off in Matthew 27. Now, this is a powerful substitutionary death if what we celebrate at Easter happens next. So that's where we pick up right now. And, I just want to reread this, the passage. So it says, "Now after the Sabbath," and this is part of the reason why they wanted Jesus to go ahead and basically hurry up and die on the day before that, so he would be, not still suffering on the cross during the Sabbath. And toward the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the tomb. And then there's this earthquake. An angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning and his clothing white as snow. And for fear of him, the guards trembled and became like dead men. This is usually what happens when the angels appear, is like people think they're about to die. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who is crucified. For he is not here, for he is risen. As he said, come see the place where he lay. And then go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead. And behold, he's going before you to Galilee. There you will see him. See, I have told you." So they departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy and ran to tell his disciples. So what I want to center on today in the story, this is the story of Jesus' resurrection. And this is the story about everything. That if this thing is true, the dominoes just fall about everything, about God's claim over all, like our need to submit to him, to love him, to follow him. Everything hinges on this reality. Even the hope of heaven hinges on this reality. There is no real sense of confidence on why you can have a confidence in the afterlife. I was just reading some statistics on this, that Americans overwhelmingly believe in the afterlife. In fact, there are more people right now in America that believe in the afterlife than there were several decades ago. Like when I was born, that ancient ago, that more people believe in the afterlife now, but we don't really have a reason to say why we think there's a heaven, why we think that we'll live after we die here on this earth. And so the resurrection is key to all of this. Now, the part we're going to zero in on today is just the response of these women, and you already see it in these verses here. But this has really been a theme over the last several weeks. We've been going through Matthew the last 1 week of Jesus' life, and it started with the triumphal entry, that as he comes in, that there are crowds that begin to shout, Hosanna. And that word Hosanna, as he enters into Jerusalem for the final time, means save us or deliver us, something along those lines. It's just like explosive praise. And so there's a response. He comes in, there is that response there. Then he is having the Last Supper with his disciples, and then there was a response asked of the disciples there. Not Judas, because he took off, but whenever he broke the bread and he poured wine into a jar, and he says, "Hey, you need to participate in my death that's about to happen." It had not even happened yet. We remember the Lord's Supper. We'll do that today. That we remember the Lord's Supper, remembering Jesus' death and resurrection, and then looking forward to the new heavens and new earth. But that Last Supper there was actually looking forward to a death that had not occurred yet. But there was an invitation: come participate in this death. You need this for forgiveness and for everything else. And then there was an invitation to receive the restoring grace of God in his betrayal, that he'd been betrayed by Judas, he'd been betrayed by Peter, but truthfully, he's been betrayed by all of us. That's what sin is a betrayal of God. His role as king, he has rights over all. We've not obeyed him as we should. We've not honored him as he deserves, all of that. And we've betrayed him, but there was just an invitation, and we saw this in his interaction with Peter, and we see this in his death on the cross, just an invitation for healing and restoration and forgiveness. That betrayal is laid on Jesus there whenever he was forsaken by the Father. So here's the reality. The resurrection is a claim that's so huge that a response is demanded from it. It really is. It's a demanded response that you can't just do nothing with it. Can't. It's impossible. Now, here would be the case I'd make. There's a lot of different responses to hearing this. Like in this room right now, there are some that are like, I don't think so. I don't buy it. That'd be one response. There'd be another response that might be kind of like, yeah, it probably happened. Met with a yawn, that we're just not really all that moving. I mean, maybe, yeah, sure, fine. I believe that. It might even be a little bit more positive. I believe that, but so what, kind of thing. And then it kind of moves down the scale. Others that are like, yeah, this is really significant, and I should be more moved by him than I am. And then there would be some that are like, man, I'm completely blown away that he would die for me and that he would be raised from the dead. There's lots of different responses, even as we walked in here today. But here's just a thought that I was really challenged by this, that I read this from, there's a pastor named Tim Keller, and Keller made this case, and I've actually preached sermons like this, but he would make the case that what he would do if he was going to preach an Easter sermon, which he's with the Lord now, But he would say, look, I don't know that I would necessarily run through like all of the, they call it apologetics, like defense and reason for the believability of the Bible or a particular truth claim, in this case, the resurrection. He said, I don't know that I would run through, all the, even though it's valuable, and I've preached that kind of sermon here before about, hey, let's think it through. Is it really true that, that a group of disciples could overpower a detachment of trained soldiers, Roman soldiers? Does it make sense that if someone had stolen the body, that the Roman government and the Jewish leaders would be very motivated to go find that body? You find the body, it all goes away, And there's a whole lot of things along that line. Even the extra biblical references, like Josephus is not in the Bible anywhere, and he writes about Jesus and a lot of the things that were happening at that time. And you could walk through that, but here would be what Keller would say. He's like, look, you can pound away at apologetics and trying to make a case on here's why the Bible is true, here's why the resurrection is believable, but he would just make the case that, but what does that get you if somebody doesn't want it to be true? If somebody doesn't want it to be true, if they don't want Jesus to have been resurrected from the dead, because they would know if Jesus was resurrected from the dead, there would be implications for how we live and what we value and what we do. And because we don't want it to be true, like we just kind of mute all of those arguments. In other words, the apologetics. And what I'm hoping is going to happen today while we just work through this is we look at the response of these women that gets even more clear in the next couple of verses, that I think I'm hoping that the response that we're going to see there and what it leads us to, you're going to want this to be true. You're going to want the resurrection to be true. And by the way, it is, so it is even better. So let's keep moving along on this thought that the women are we're about to see here in verse 9. And it's just so interesting as they're about to bump into Jesus, as they've been told, hey, go tell the disciples. And they're like afraid and they're excited and they're about to go and tell, which by the way is just always an interesting response. We just can't help talk about what we love, and they're about to go tell the disciples what they're excited about. And here it is, verse 9. And behold, Jesus met them and he said, greetings. And they came up, they took hold of his feet, and they worshiped him. Then Jesus said to them, do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and there they will see me. So what they do is, you may just read this through and think, oh yeah, well they fell down and they worshiped him. It's right there, you read it, But you think this through, what would be, just keep in mind what just happened here. They just killed your guy. It'd be the Roman leaders and the Jewish leaders. They just killed your guy. And what my first response, and what I would even expect out of Jesus as his first response when we all see each other and, oh my goodness, he's resurrected from the dead, be like, hey, awesome. Let's go storm. You mentioned to Peter the other day that you could have legions of angels at your command in a second, and you didn't really need our defense. Cool. Let's get them here, and let's go take care of Herod first because he ordered it, and then let's go pay a little visit to the Jewish leaders, the chief priest in particular. Let's just go have a little word with them, And in other words, it's time for a little payback. That some justice for what you've done. That's what you would expect. And truly, like that blood runs through all of our veins. We're like, we'll pay you back for what you did. So it's shocking, number one, that Jesus is not interested in that and had never been interested in that. That was never what he was going for. But it's also striking the response of these women that are there. That they don't go to that place of let's go storm the castle, and they don't do anything other than, and this is the response. Like this is it. Hopefully the whole goal of the sermon and the whole impact of the resurrection on us is that Jesus has been resurrected, and then the response is worship. We worship. And I think it's absolutely, and I think it's really important that they didn't start negotiating with him and going, oh, wow, you're resurrected. All right, I'll tell you what. If you can help my marriage improve, and if you can fix our financial situation, and if you can this and this, then I'm going to really commit myself to you. They didn't come with any stipulations. I think we can do that a lot of times, but they just fell down and they worship. So let's just talk about worship for a minute, because if this is the response, and can we all see that? This is the response, not just for them, but that's the response for me and you. If you think about what worship really is sometimes that can feel like real Bible-y and churchy and, well, you sing the songs and that's what it is. And maybe it is. You can worship while you sing, but that isn't necessarily only what it means. Worship is what you do when you ascribe ultimate worth to something. And we do it all the time. Like culturally, this happens all the time around us, where you might praise, a musician just crushes it and everybody loses their mind, or an athlete has an incredible performance, hits another three, and as they're subbing them out, last time ever on the court, everybody stands and applauds. I mean, it's a form of praise. It's a form of a kind of worship, you could really say. It's just saying you're great. It's usually tied to performance. You've outperformed everyone, and we think you are the best. And here's the praise that comes along with it. And whenever you're talking about worship to God, what you're really saying is that you're the most excellent being that does the most excellent things, and you do this with the most wisdom, and you do this with the most power. Like that's what worship is doing, is you're ascribing that kind of worth and value to Jesus whenever you worship. Like that's the posture, and the resurrection really demands that kind of response. I love this right here, Frederick Buechner, and he's a really interesting writer. Here's what Buechner says on the resurrection. The resurrection means the worst thing is never the last thing about the world. It's the next to the last thing. The last thing is the best. It's the power from on high that comes down into the world, that wells up from the rock bottom. Worst of the world like a hidden spring. Can you believe it? The last best thing is the laughing deep in the hearts of the saints. Sometimes our hearts even. Yes, you are terribly loved and forgiven. Yes, you are healed. All is well. I mean, that's the resurrection, all right? And the focus of that resurrection would be that would bubble up in you and say, because of that, because of your worth and because of your performance, you are the greatest being, the most excellent being that does the most excellent things with the most wisdom and the highest power. So here's the deal, though. So it seems pretty straightforward, but you need to understand how this works, is that our hearts, and by heart, I mean like what we value, that it's just never a neutral thing. It's not like, well, I haven't really been worshiping anything, but I probably do need to put Jesus in that spot, so I start worshiping something. Is that we're just created to worship. Like we praise things or people, like we just do. It's our wiring. We naturally do that. And in other words, you're all in on falling at the feet of something, And I'll give you a few examples of how this can play out, just to make this like practical and tangible. And this is a lot of my own experience. So if you're not sure this is true, then here, if you're not sure how you would identify what it could be, a direct line would be to look at your emotional life and to see the things that bring you the most joy or the things that make you the most mad whenever they're threatened or when they're taken away. If you look at what gets you really fired up, gets you really excited on an emotional level, things that you find yourself intellectually, mentally thinking about, you just kind of drift off and consider them, that you when your mind goes there, that's the positive way it looks. But when that thing is threatened, something takes it away, there's anger and there's a response. So if that's true, you can see a lot of worship energy because that's what that is, where it's something I love, that whenever it's going well, something that makes me angry, is you can go to a 9U baseball game this spring. I actually encourage you to go do it. Go to a gym near you and go watch some people, some rando kids play basketball, go watch some rando kids playing baseball, whatever. Just show up to a field and watch everybody collectively lose their mind. It's wild. I mean, erupting. You could watch a 6-year-old T-ball game erupting like the Rangers just won the pennant again. The craziness, And then the other side, hands on head and all that. It's wild, completely wild. And you can see it where there's something that we love, and it's usually, all these things, by the way, are even good things, but they can really easily begin to take a life of their own. Or it can be even with money, where money made, money lost, where we think about it all the time, that we get really happy when it's multiplying like we think it should, or we get a promotion. We get really upset when there's weird things with the stock market. I'm not saying that's happened recently, or whatever else, that things that can happen that make us, even an economy that's uncertain, that make us anxious, that make us angry when things don't go according to plan. We can be thinking about it a lot, and even like hobbies enjoyed, where a certain thing that we like to do, a vacation spot, a certain activity that we may enjoy, that we love to do, we think about it, we get angry whenever it doesn't happen. And as I reflect on this, that I mean, man, I look at what has made me mad. If you want to look at your anger, that will draw a direct line to that. A lot of the times for me, it's been like things along those lines where something has not gone according to plan. That's probably the short version for me, where I love my kids. That's good. I want to say that up front. It's great to do sports with your kids, and then it invariably doesn't go according to plan. And a lot of heartbreak comes with that. It does. And you want good things for them so much, but then you know that it's taken a weird turn in your heart. And you can tell it by the depth of your bitterness when it goes badly. And for you, you're like, that's so shallow that you care that much about sports. Okay, we'll do it with your kids' academics or whatever, the recorder or whatever they play. I don't know. But there's this disappointment you may feel. And then even with money, and you could feel it with the bitterness you could feel whenever you just think about it a lot, and money that could be invested in saving and whatever it is, and when it's not going according to plan, and you can feel those things begin to rise up in you. And I probably have actually raised my voice, like thrown temper tantrums. I've mentioned most of them here before. We'll get into that later if you're newer. I'm sure it'll come back up. But most of my temper tantrums, this is wild. Most of my temper tantrums I've thrown have been mid-hobby, like performing, like in the middle of like a fun thing. And I've put so much expectation of, hey, it's going to be so great when we're on the slopes for 3 days, or it's going to be so great in July when I'm knee deep. Right now it's tough, but in July I'll be knee deep in trout water and it's going to be incredible. Everything's going to be fine. And then it's not fine. A rod tip gets broken off, or, you lose your boat, or these are just a few examples from the past. And these things happen, and then like just anger, and like you just think objectively about it. Why the anger? That is so interesting. And the reason is that, fly fishing and all the hobby, it's all skiing, it's all fun stuff. It's good stuff, even given by God. But then it just begins to take kind of a worship energy. And that's the case I'm making with you, is that like I really need to say it like to Lubbock Americans, and here we are, that this is the temptation. You're probably not considering getting a pentagram tattoo. I don't think. I bet you're not. But what I do think the temptation is to have these other good things that are even values in the Bible: family and sports and your children's academic pursuits, your own career and developing it, moving it, saving and multiplying money, and having good time with your friends and your family. All of those things are good. The temptation is to take those good things and move those from a good thing that should be subordinated to the worship of the Most High God who's been resurrected from the dead, and then move hunting, move beauty and fitness, you could do it with anything you want, and move that thing to the top thing, control and power, on and on. This is the temptation, and this passage is a reminder to us that the right response, as we see what these women did in this passage, is that they took hold of his feet and they worshiped Jesus when they saw the resurrected Christ. That's the response. And it just so happens, and this is why you want this to be true. It's not just that this is true, which it is, but you want this to be true because it just so happens that the worship of the true God is what actually satisfies our soul. Like, he doesn't need it. With my youngest, we've been watching some, like Greek mythology type stuff, and like the old Clash of the Titans or whatever. We've been watching some of that stuff. It's really interesting. The Greek gods, like they needed the prayers of their people that they'd made for them. Like they needed it. Like they are kind of like playing us along so that they get our prayers, and it kind of fills them up and helps them keep existing and moving forward. And it's just really interesting that God created us even though he did not need anything. He's not served by human hands. He needed nothing from us. We brought nothing to the table. Even our praise, our worship of him doesn't like complete him. He wasn't incomplete in any way. He loves it. He brings great joy to see what's going on tonight. It does. He loves it. He says that in the scripture, but he didn't need it. And so really what the invitation in this response of worship, and why we want this to be true, is this is where your soul finds its deepest satisfaction. Really, all those other things, and you could put your own things in the blank of what makes you mad, and that might be an interesting post-Easter dinner conversation. What kind of things make you mad? And kind of maybe start fights. It might be kind of fun. Never know what'll happen. But the interesting thing about it is every one of those things disappoints, and we have all put those things in that first place. So here's the thing. The thing today that I'm asking, and more that I think that the scripture is asking, is the resurrection of Jesus demands a response. The response, you could even see it initially in those first 8 verses as the women showed up. There was joy, and hey, the angel says that he's no longer here, he is risen, and then he actually meets them there, and you can see it, they fall down. There's no even words. There's just a posture of excellence and praise that is the response to the resurrected Christ. And so my invitation today would be is that if you have never put your hope in Jesus, that you're invited. And it's one of the best things is that the next to the last thing is not the end. The last thing is the best thing. And you're invited. You're invited to, there's this great future ahead and a new heavens and new earth and even new life right now. And I don't care what's gone on in your background. It's why he was forsaken on the cross. It doesn't matter if you've lived a long life apart from him or you've been chasing, while living a great West Texas life, you've been chasing all of those things and you're doing all of them very well, but you've never submitted your heart to Jesus. You've never put your trust in him. He will not turn you away. And that's exactly why he was forsaken on the cross, so you'd be forgiven and so that you would know him. And if you are a Christian, then I just want to encourage you to wake up. That it's really easy at Easter, that if ever there's a Sunday that's just easy to go on autopilot. I don't know if the Saturday night service is consumed with a roast that's in the oven. I don't know. That probably in you guys in Easter dresses. I'm not sure. That's the Saturday night Easter service vibe. I'm not entirely positive on that. But it's just so easy to kind of do it, and you kind of knocked it out. We got our thing knocked out on Saturday night, and now we can kind of get on our weekend. But the call to you, as someone that's been following Jesus, is this is the resurrected King, and he's laid his life down for you. He suffered in your place. All that humiliation should have been yours, and through that resurrection, that he's now given forgiveness to you, love, acceptance, conquering death. All those things are yours, and you're even freed from making good things like 9U baseball or fly fishing or work or stock market or anything else. Instead of taking good things and making them ultimate and finding your worth going up and down from that, you're not freed from that. You're not freed to know the grace of God. So I'm just going to finish by reading a little section of 1 Peter 3:18. It says, "For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous." He's the righteous one, we are the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God. And if anything is worthy of worship in the entire history of the world, it's that. So let me pray. Lord, would you give us hope of your conquering power in our own lives, even being freed from the tyranny of taking these lesser things and making them ultimate. Lord, we've done that so many times. I know I have, and we need to be set free. We need to know who you are. And Lord, would you give us a response of worship, and not just intellectually grasping that, but even from our hearts, emotionally agreeing with that truth, and even moving to a place of submission and obedience. Lord, let that be. And I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.